So what we're doing this morning is, and good morning, Logan. What we're doing this morning is just, I wanted to just take some time and, I mean, it's no surprise to you. I mean, Friday, I know some of you were on the Howard Hanna Town Hall meeting where agents from around the country were talking about these things. And I think tomorrow there's a pop-up webinar from Howard Hanna where they're talking about the exclusive right to represent agreement. And that's one of the things that's really cool. I talking as we first came on, David's involved with the Howard Hanna Fast Start program. I think Russell Johnson is in there too. And David, you'll have company coming up because Lori can't do it on Mondays, but she'll be in, or Lawhorn will be in, I think tomorrow, right? Is that the next session? I can't remember. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead.
Thursday.
Okay. And I wanted to just, kind of go ahead and just kind of walk you through some things I've been learning, not only from these webinars, but I've gotten involved a little bit. I'm not going to go down the slippery slope too much, but I've gotten involved a little bit with Clubhouse, which is a new social media platform. It started out with just for iPhone users, and it's totally audio, but you can be on there and you can follow different people. And when they're in a room talking or running a conversation, you'll get a ping saying, hey, such and such is talking about this. And just interesting enough, yesterday, I was doing some work and I got pinged into a room where they were talking about this very thing about, how do we do the best we can to help buyers, have a chance at winning in a contract scenario. And, it was good. I mean, basically affirmed that I think the things that we've been talking about are correct. And there wasn't a whole lot of add-on things, but there were a couple things that I thought, sort of said it in a little bit different way. So I've added that into it as well. But when we think about buyers' tips for a frenetic market, the first thing that we want to do is set the table. We're talking about the buyers. The first thing we want to do is we want to set the table. We can't go into this willy-nilly. The buyer really needs to understand exactly what is the situation. And however you do that, hopefully this is helpful. You can go back to my radio show from a couple, 3 weeks ago where I talked about this. It's 20 minutes. You could send that to them. You've obviously got your own things, but the bottom line is the buyer interview is now more important than ever. I've talked about the buyer interview in the past in regards to the exclusive right to represent and making sure that people understand that you're going to give it your all, but you need to know that they're going to give it their all as well. Well, that's now more important than ever because we've got to make sure that the buyer understands all that's going to be involved with getting their contract accepted. And the fact is that they may lose a couple, 3, 4, 5, 6 before they actually get a property. And for those of you that have been with me for a while, it's what I call safe islanding people. And safe islanding people is getting them to a place where they're totally comfortable with where you are on the journey, toward them, being able to buy a house. And you get them to a certain place and they're totally comfortable. And then you start moving in another place that gets them outside their comfort zone, like a higher price or some sort of no contingency or whatever. And their body language, their questions and stuff, that they're now freaking out, right? And so we got to bring them back to the safe island, right? Well, okay, here's where we were. I can tell that you're now freaking out. Let's figure out how we get you to the next place. And it's not unlike a lot of you, not all of you, but a lot of you have kids and younger kids. And it's not unlike them jumping off the side of the pool for the first time. They're safe up on that deck, right? And even though they trust you, you're the dad or you're the mom or you're the aunt or the uncle or whatever, and you're saying, I'll catch you. They're up there going, I'm not so sure you're going to catch me. I'm not so sure. And so they lean over and then they can step back. They lean over and step. That's the same thing with a buyer. You get them to a certain place, they're totally trusting you, but then all of a sudden you tell them to do something that's outside their comfort zone and they're going to resist. And so the buyer interview is about getting them to the place where they're comfortable. They understand the whole process, and you go through the whole process. And when you get to a place and they go, whoa, I don't know. I say, oh, remember we talked about this. This is how we're going to handle this. This is how we're going to do this. And they go, oh yeah. Okay. And it's even to the point of, for me, kind of joking with people with the fact that I've bought and sold a lot of houses in my, however many years, 50 years of doing this stuff. And I still wake up, a couple of days later going, what the heck have I done? How am I going to do this? Was this really a smart thing to do? And that's where we got to tell them, hey, call me. When you feel that way, call me and I'll talk you down. I'll get you out of the tree. We'll get you back on the island, firm, terra firma, kind of thing. And we'll move forward. So the buyer interview is about the whole thing from start to finish, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And the first thing that's going to happen is if they don't have all cash, right? If they don't have all cash, which obviously a lot of them don't, we got to get them not only pre-qualified, but we got to get them pre-approved. And that's why you want to go to a lender that you can trust and is reliable, and that that once they get the information, they're going to get as much of the information as they can get so that they've got all the conditions met, and that whenever they do have to write a contract and send a letter, it's the strongest letter it can be. It's the strongest letter it could be. And this is where I think, and Logan's working on one right now with USA. That's great. That's who they wanted to use. And that's what we do when we represent our class. But for me, if we can get them to use a local, well-respected lender, that's one of the things that's going to help them. Well, I've got a banker. Yeah, I understand you have a banker, but let me just explain the market. If you go with Jay Dominic, or if you go with Mike Bittrick, or if you go with Michael Buczynski or somebody, all the realtors in the area know those people. And they know that they know how to do their lawn. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. They know them well enough to know that if they tell you they're good, they're good. And that can really be huge for the seller, knowing that they've got somebody, even though they've got to get a loan, that it's as good as cash because they're going to be at closing with the money, right? And so that's the first thing, not just get them pre-qualified, but also if you can get them with a local, well-respected lender and get them to go through as much of the process as they can. So when they do find the right house, they can come in with a pre-approval that versus just, well, I talked to the guy and I think he's good, right? And as Alex just put in the chat, and Jay will do this for you as well, a number of lenders. If they don't, I'm not sure I would use them. But have your loan officer prepared and ready to call the listing agent for you. And something that Jay said the other day, I think it was last week in one of our classes, is that sometimes somebody with 5% down has got a better chance of closing than the person that had 20% down, because the person with 5% down has stellar credit, whereas the person with 20% down may have some dings.
That's right.
They may run into some underwriting, situations. You don't know that. People say, oh, it's 20% down, we're good to go. 80% loan to value, we're good to go. Well, not if the person doesn't have good credit. So to have your lender prepared and ready to call the listing agent for you, that way you can, and we'll get to this as well, but when you're writing the contract, you can be saying, if it's all right, I'm going to have Jay Dominic give you a call so he can follow up and you can ask him any questions in regards to the letter that he has sent you. So again, the buyer interview being more important than ever, getting somebody pre-qualified and better yet, pre-approved by a local, well-respected lender. And then 3, as we set the table, make your contract as clean as possible. Make your contract as clean as possible. What I mean by that is by removing as many contingencies as possible while still finding ways to protect your buyer. Our job, representing the buyer, is still to protect them, to give them the information they need to make an educated decision, right? If they move forward, after you've given them the information they need, if they move forward and do things a certain way, then you've explained it and that they're moving forward because they want to. And yeah, maybe they're venturing outside their comfort zone, but they really want to buy this house and they're ready to move forward. So make your contract as clean as possible. And the best way of doing that is by getting with the listing agent and asking as many questions as you can. We're going to be writing a contract on this house. What is it that I understand price, got that part. But what other things would help me or help my buyer be seen in the best light by your seller? We want to have the right closing date. We want to have the right contingencies or no contingencies or whatever the case may be. Tell me what they really are looking for, so that we can bring you an offer that all they have to think about is the terms. They don't have to worry about any of the rest of the stuff. I'm going to have them totally pre-approved. That's going to be fine. I'm going to have this and done, blah, blah, blah. But is there anything else? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then, we'll open up for questions as well and get people's input. If you can convert to cash, that's great. If you've got a parent or a relative that would be willing to fund you, and then as soon as you buy the house, you go in for a refinance, and then pay them the money back. If you can do that, that's great. But most of us don't have that. My kids would have loved to have had that when they were buying their houses, and my kids have. I mean, my youngest daughter and her husband, they bought in the last frenetic market. It took us 4 or 5 contracts to get what they wanted.
I don't have audio.
Yes, you do.
Video.
The point being is, and this is something Alex sent me when I asked for people's input, the more that you can put down, the better. I mean, obviously credit, we talked about that already. Credit is so important, but the more you put down, so the buyer may need 10 to 20% down because a 3.5% FHA loan may cause somebody a problem, a seller a problem as to the appraisal, as an example. And especially be careful. And I had this conversation with one of our agents last weekend.
Audio.
Barb.
I don't have
Barb.
audio. I can't.
There we go. We lost a deal because the buyer wanted to be VA, 100% financing. And when we lost that, it turned out they could have gone conventional. And the listing agent didn't do a good job of explaining that. And our agent was upset because they could have gone a different way, but the VA was, wait, now why did they want to go conventional versus VA? Because VA is a stricter appraisal issue than conventional. VA and FHA is a separate paragraph in the contract. And it's much stricter. And quite honestly, the VA and the FHA can ask for repairs, which the seller has to make. So even if they had gotten a no inspection, and the VA or FHA appraiser finds something, they could ask for those repairs, and the seller can't throw money at that. Those repairs have to be made prior to closing. So you have to be really careful if you're going to be FHA or VA. Be very careful of that if you're in a multiple contract situation, because that could bring you to the bottom of the pile pretty quickly. What I'd encourage you to do is get with your lender, that you're working with, and say, hey, I know that we got this guy qualified for FHA or VA, but can you find a program that is, good enough for him, beneficial enough for him or her or them to go conventional? So that's the first thing, is if you convert to cash, great. Secondly, the more that you can put down, the better. Now, again, depending on the situation, you might put yourself in a situation. And what I would do in the contract is I put as much money down as possible, but if for some reason the appraiser comes in low and you've got to try to make up the difference, go back to the lender and say, we were going to put 20% down, but we need to make up some of the difference with the appraisal. What does it look like if we go 90% loan to value versus 80% loan to value? There are different ways to skin that cat. There's a thing called 80-15-5 financing, where it's 80% first trust, 15% second trust, and 5% down. You can still get no PMI with that type of loan. And what happens is it's a commercial second trust that usually has like a 5-year term or a balloon that needs to be paid. But in 5 years, it can be refinanced and that kind of thing. There are different ways to do it. But as far as writing the contract, I'd write it with as much money down as possible, because that's what the seller's looking for. If the appraisal comes in low and you've got to make up somehow, you go back to the lender and say, is there another way that we can do this? So that some of this money could go toward making up the appraisal. The next thing beyond converting the cash is obviously start thinking about the inspections. Some sellers will allow you to do a home inspection with either you're in or you're out. So you can cross out the deficiency paragraph in the home inspection where you're saying, we're not going to come back. We're not going to ask for anything. We're just going to look. And if it's, okay, then we're going to go forward. And if not, we're going to pull out. And again, we'll talk more about this on Thursday. This is one place that with working with the sellers is we want, if you're going to accept a home inspection contingency like that, keep it within the confines of the homeowners association document contingency, because they can get out with that anyway. So try to get both things done in the same time period. And I'm not as concerned from a seller standpoint of accepting a home inspection contingency if I'm in a homeowners association, because I know that the buyer has a way of getting out. So I'll let them have the home inspection, but it's going to be the same time frame as when I'm getting you the documents and you have 3 days to get out if you want to get out. So that's just something to keep in mind. But as far as terminating the home inspection, the first thing I would say about that is if you're in a situation where today is Tuesday, the contract comes on the market tomorrow or Thursday, and it says, we're going to review contracts on Monday, May 24th, right? They're going to go through the weekend. They're going to do an open house, whatever. Well, look at that as a plus. Because what I would recommend is if your buyer is serious about the house and they want to write it as strong as possible, go into the house with a home inspector. It'll cost you less, and they just do a kind of a once over around the house. They're not doing a thorough home inspection, but go through it and have the home inspector say, I don't see anything that you need to be too concerned about here. That way, you got a buyer that's much more comfortable with going in without a home inspection. The other thing that's really nice, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but not having a home inspection, paragraph 15 or 16, whichever one is the equipment condition paragraph, you have the right to a pre-settlement walkthrough before closing. What I'd encourage you to do is do that a couple days before closing and bring a home inspector in there. If you didn't get a home inspection, you can go bring a home inspector. The paragraph says you can bring inspectors in, bring a home inspector in, and then anything as far as the equipment condition, the HVAC, the plumbing, the appliances, all of those things can be checked by a professional. And if anything's wrong, the seller has to fix it per the contract, unless that got crossed out in some way. So that gives them buyer a little bit of protection, and a lot of agents don't, quite honestly, realize that. And then the other thing I really encourage is having your buyer, if you can't get the seller to do it, having the buyer to buy a home warranty, a 1-year home warranty, so that if something goes wrong, they got deductible for a repair or a replacement. And again, that gives them peace of mind. That gets them on a safe island saying, I've got some ways to protect myself. So again, if there are days before the seller is going to review contracts, get a home inspector in there. The pre-settlement walkthrough are a couple of things there. Thoughts from that? Go ahead. Get on mute, Barb. There you go. Barb, you got on mute.
One down part about taking a home inspector right at the beginning is you're still not guaranteed that you're going to be the one. And if you've gone through this 4 or 5 times, that's a lot of money that they've thrown away.
Yeah,
So.
that's true. I mean, there is a cost to it, but if I'm trying to make the buyer feel as comfortable as possible, those at the one, you're gonna have a hard time finding a home inspector in a short period of time. So you got to have a home inspector who you're doing business with that's on your, what do they call that? Short call list that will come out. You're not asked to do a full home inspection. And so, what would you charge me to go through and give us a once over as to anything that we need to be concerned about? But you're right, that would cost money each and every time. But if that's something that, you've got people, I know each of you have people, buyers that say, well, I don't want to do this without a home inspection. Well, this might be a way of handling that objection.
it's already so hard to get a home inspector even within 10 or 14 days. Not to shoot this idea down, but you're going to burn through 3 or 4 home inspectors before you find one that's able to show up at the time and date that you need them to show up for this.
Yep.
I will say that the one thing, if you've got a conventional financer with 3.5% down or 5%, just, something less than 10 or 20, I'm doing if the property's good enough. Home inspection for informational purposes. It's kind of best of both worlds. Like you were saying, it's walk or you keep it, but at least you
Wait a
still.
minute, Alex, I gotta stop you for a minute. What you just said is incorrect. Information purposes doesn't give you a walk. I'm just doing this for my own information. So don't do that. And I understand what you're saying. What you want to do is I'm either gonna move forward after I do this home inspection, or I'm gonna ask to be released. I'm not gonna ask you to fix anything, but for information purposes only, that definitely brings you into the gray, because you do information purposes only and then say, oh, well, this is something major. I don't want to buy this house anymore. Well, you don't have an out, because you said, I just did this for my own information.
Unless you write it into the extra information and say, we're doing a home inspection for informational purposes, but if there was something major, then majorly wrong, then, well,
And then what I would just use is the home inspection contingency and cross out paragraph B, where you're saying you cross it out, where you're not going to ask for any deficiencies. You're just going to get out.
Right. So I've been doing, well, now I guess I'm learning I'm doing something wrong. I've been doing both home inspection for informational purposes and then on the HICA, exactly what you said, crossing out.
But you don't have, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to have both. If you cross out if they accept your home inspection contingency with paragraph B crossed out, then that's all you need, because that gives you the out.
Okay. So I have overkill.
I don't like the words information purposes only, because what does that say? That just says I'm looking for information. Doesn't say I want to get out.
Right.
I just want to know what the heck, I want to, information purposes only is like getting a tour of the house, seeing where the hot water heater is, see where the water turnoff is, see this, that. It doesn't give you any options of if I don't like it. So I would not use information purposes only. I just use the home inspection contingency and cross out the deficiencies paragraph. And as far as writing the offer, I would not do anything in regards to the equipment condition paragraph.
Right.
Unless the listing agent, because the listing agent may cross that out and say property is an as-is condition, and that's a whole nother game.
Right.
Because that's saying you get to the walkthrough and those things aren't working. That's too bad, because you're selling this at as-is condition.
And that includes well and septic, which are going to be probably your most expensive ticketed items anyways.
Right. Right.
So
If you're a listing agent and you're talking about as is, you make sure that if you don't know, you talk to me, and we'll talk more about this on Thursday, but you got to cross a bunch of paragraphs out. You got a well and septic, termite inspection, equipment condition paragraph, all those you have to deal with, because all of those say that the buyer has rights. And you're saying in the contract per paragraph, blah, 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 and blah, 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 this property's been sold as is. And here's the problem. Unless it's cash, the seller can say that all day long, but the lender may not go along with it. The lender wants a certificate from the well. The lender wants a termite certificate. Those are conditions to the loan. So you've got to be really careful with that. If they cross those things out, and you find something wrong, you've got to be within your finance contingency time frame, the 30-day time period where you can get out on financing because you got some termite issues and the seller's not willing to fix it. That's your only leverage in that situation.
I thought that seller, I didn't know the termite inspection or septic was linked to home. I thought that was just a given that the seller had to provide, whether it was as is or not.
Well, they have to provide it, but if it's not working, this buyer has the right to have it fixed unless they've done it in as is condition. But the lender, most lenders' conditions has a term. You've got to have termite, you've got to have hazard insurance binder, and you've got to have well and septic if it's there. They're not going to lend the money unless all those things are in place. Satisfactory working order type of scenario.
Okay, I have have two questions that are totally different from inspection. On a different note here, I wanted to be able to kind of prepare the renters. I'm trying to turn renters into buyers. And the landlords aren't reporting their like 2 years of credit. I mean, that they have in their condominiums or apartments. So what is a program that they can go to be able to report that if the landlords aren't reporting their credit, to be able to have a higher credit score? I mean, they have paid like $2,500 for 2 years, and they're not being, you know, there is nothing to substantiate that other
Yeah,
than.
Janine, I'd go to Jay Dominic on that and ask him. I don't think that paying your rent has anything to do with your credit, to be perfectly honest. I think all that is.
Your credit score substantially raises, and they report it, and it can be 150 points. So instead of going in under 500, you can go in with 750. I mean, that's a
Yeah, so
substantial.
I would reach out to Jay on that. I don't know who the reporting agency is on that. Yeah,
Okay,
but
thanks.
Jay,
Yeah, I
Jay
think-
Dominic should know because he helps people with credit all the time.
Okay, I've gone to one that the landlord isn't paying, it doesn't have to pay, but where the renter has to pay like 100 to be able to have it reported.
Yeah, again, Janine, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but Jay will. Jay works with borrowers all the time to increase their credit scores, and he'll know how to do that.
Okay, for the second question, the HOA, I just want to know how many percentages do you think that homes that are sold have HOAs with them? Because I wanted to know whether or not, what was your expertise to present like a copy prior to the contract being offered as to after? Because the transfer of HOA has a cost to it. But if the owner has an HOA contract or HOA packet with information in it, would you provide that to them before the contract is signed?
Well, again, we're going to talk more about that on Thursday when we're talking about the seller side of this. But yes, I would have the documents ready. So when the contract is ratified, we hand them right to the buyer right then, because then they only have 3 days to get out. And if they're going to get out, I want to know they're going to get out quick. So the sooner I can have those documents to the buyer, the better. Yeah. Okay. So-
Michael, can
Yeah.
I ask a quick question?
Sure.
What's the difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval? Like when you're dealing with the national lender, like we were only pre-qualified. I mean, we were not pre-approved with USAA in this last case, but what's the difference? Does the letter look different, or were we looking for a specific language in that lender letter?
The difference is that all the buyer has told the lender hasn't been verified yet. Pre-qualification just means, okay, they told me they make this much money. They told me they have this. They told me they have that. They've run a credit score.
Right.
And so they're pre-qualified, but none of the verifications have happened. So they haven't verified their down payment funds. They haven't verified their employment. They haven't verified all these different things that will be conditions of the loan.
So my understanding with USAA is that in order to be verified like that, you have to have a property address. And for them to put in a property address for the national lender, they had to actually activate it. So it had to be actually ratified. I mean, it had to be, they were then starting the loan process. So that was a disadvantage. And this latest one was that the only thing we were able to attain is this pre-qualification letter, which really meant nothing. So now he's going through it's not going to fall apart, I don't think, but it's just curious. So other lenders are able to put in the actual address versus some of the national ones where there's, for some reason with their process, it has to be like the offer has to be accepted before you go into it. And this has been sort of new to me, but that's another disadvantage of the USAA.
See you, Vincent. See you later, man. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you've got a situation that even a pre-approval doesn't mean a commitment. That's
Right.
the problem, is the commitment. You're going through the whole thing. You know that even you get down to the last few days. If you don't have the appraisal back yet, that
Right.
loan still has conditions on it.
Right.
And the loan commitment often that time doesn't come till the day before closing.
Oh, wow.
that-
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, because you've got all these conditions have to be met for it to be fully committed and funded, right?
Right.
So, but the bottom line is, what you're looking for is a stronger letter than, hey, the smell test, if you will. Hey, I talked to them. They told me they make this much money. They told me they don't have any debt, blah, blah, blah. I ran their credit score. Everything looks good, right? But then they got to verify the employment, verify the funds, verify blah, blah, blah. That's what we want to get to. And so that's why we want to get them with the lender as soon as possible, prior to them, even looking at houses yet. And it goes back again to setting the table. Why in the world are you out showing somebody $400,000 houses if they can only afford $350,000? They're just going to be bummed out, that they can't qualify for the house they wanted to buy. So you want them with the lender, so you know exactly kind of what they can do under certain scenarios, and you want to be showing them properties in the price ranges that they can qualify for, versus setting, again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, setting expectations that can't be met.
So if we're talking to a local lender, we would ask specifically, like, let's say we're dealing with Jay. We would want him to provide a pre-approval letter, not a pre-qualification letter, and he would do a little bit of fact checking on the back end then?
Well, depending on how much time you've given them, yeah, they put it into the system, and the underwriters start doing what they need to do to get all the information into the package.
Okay, well, my understanding with the USAA process was that really wasn't started at all, so it's fine. This guy's in good shape, I think, but that in and of itself is a disadvantage for a national.
Logan, if they haven't even started at all, how did you get a letter from them?
Well, I mean, they gave a pre-qualification letter.
How?
Well, maybe they have started. That's why I'm asking, Michael. I don't understand the process. Like, I don't know how much of the process the lender.
That's why I'm asking. I can't see that they give a pre-qualification letter if they haven't found out what their salary was and that kind of thing.
They've done all that.
They haven't started the process for the actual loan because they don't know what the property is yet.
Right.
But they can go through what somebody can qualify for. That's exactly what I'm talking about, is that then they get the property address. Now they start packaging the thing toward commitment.
So I guess I don't understand truly the difference between the pre-qualification and the pre-approval, except that the pre-approval has had more due diligence in terms of whether they would qualify, correct?
That's the difference.
Okay.
Yeah. I can say to Jay today, I make this much money.
Yeah.
I have this much, and this is my credit score. This is and he can tell me you can qualify up to this. But that doesn't mean that he's done anything to check any of that. He's just telling me, based on what I told him, you're pre-qualified. But he verifies those things and it becomes pre-approved. And it's pre-approved because it's not a commitment yet.
Okay.
Usually
Barb.
pre-approval can happen pretty quickly though, because most lenders do, at least any that I've dealt with, do that pretty fast. And then can also, when another house comes along because you lost out on one, they can also update that pretty quickly on their, and give you a new pre-approval for, a different amount.
Go ahead, David.
Just FYI, yesterday when we were in the Fast Start meeting, if your buyer is with the USA, and you might want to ask them to just go check with Jay, and even if they don't go with Jay, they still give them like $100 gift card. So it's like a win-win for the buyers, and they have a time frame.
wow.
They can pull their credit within 30 days, and it doesn't affect their credit. So they can do a check with Jay. They can get a $100 gift card even if they don't go with Jay, and it doesn't affect their credit. So they might get some good information from Jay that they're not getting from the other lender, and they might end up going with Jay, or they might help the buyer make a better decision, and yourself too.
That's awesome. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I would say call him and double check, but this is what I was told yesterday, and I thought it was really cool that like if they want another second opinion, they can go to Jay, and even if they don't go with them, they get a $100 gift card. So that's always cool.
That's great. Who said there wasn't a free lunch? Okay, so beyond that, we go to no home sale contingency. See if the buyer can put less down and qualify for 2 mortgages. So if somebody needs to sell their house, if they can find a way, not that they want to, and again, this is getting outside their comfort zone, if they can find a way to write their offer non-contingent, they've got a much better chance of being in the hunt than if they can't. And so, some people do a HELOC, which is a home equity loan, where they've got enough equity that they can do a HELOC and have enough money to put down on the property. So then they can put their house on the market and get it sold. Another thing is a bridge loan. Bridge loan is where you have a second trust basically that gets you the money you need to move forward with a non-contingent offer. And if for whatever reason that has to close before your existing house closes, you're okay. You just, you carry 2 mortgages for a little bit. Talk with Jay about that as well. Jay's got some really good contacts of people that have different types of bridge loans. I'm hoping in the next, couple months, we're going to have a really amazing product to offer you guys called the Buy Before You Sell program, which is a bridge loan through Town Mortgage that has a 6-month deferred interest on it, which is amazing because that way if you're, buying a new home or when I talk about in a minute about giving sellers more opportunity to stay in their house, you can wait longer before you put your house on the market. So then when you sell it, you only have to make 1 move versus 2. But if there's a way that you can find to not have to be contingent on the sale of the home, that's huge. The next thing is, committing dollars to cover appraisal deficiencies. If going over the asking price, or if escalation price takes you to a certain level, you want to, if you can, and we talked about this a little earlier, you want to be able to put something in that if the property doesn't appraise, but appraises for X, buyer is willing to contribute $5,000, $10,000 or whatever toward the deficiency between the appraisal and the contract price. That's another way of making the seller comfortable with the fact that, hey, I'm getting more money than I thought I was going to get it. But if it doesn't come in, and there are a lot of different ways to write that, I'm not going to get into the nuances of that, but if you're in that, if you're in that scenario, let me know, because there are a lot of different ways to do that. Example, my brother sold his house in Arlington, and it sold for, I forget, and this was a few years ago, it wasn't even recently, but it sold for, I don't know, $70,000 more than his list price. And it was cash. And I thought the buyer was ingenious because the buyer wrote an appraisal contingency that said, if the property appraises for not less than, then I waive the appraisal. But if it, appraises for, so anything more than that. So my brother and his wife knew exactly the worst case scenario, what they were going to have. This guy was going to pay this much if it appraised, but if it appraised at the higher number, they were going to get the windfall, and they got the windfall. It appraised at full price. So they ended up getting $25,000 or $30,000 more than what the appraisal contingency had in there, but they knew. And that's, again, answering the seller's questions. Worst case scenario, this is where I am with these people. And you want to check with the lender as it relates to this, because sometimes the lender does not want that in the contract. They want that in an outside addendum so when you turn the contract over to the lender and the appraiser isn't getting something that basically waves at least a yellow flag, if not a red flag. Hey, this house is overpriced. This house is sold for over list. Therefore, check it carefully. So just, have that as a separate addendum between the buyer and the seller, so that contract does not have to go to the lender or the appraiser. The higher the earnest money in making your offer strong, the better. I'm stunned. And I look at every contract that comes through our company. I'm stunned by how small some of the earnest money deposits are in this marketplace. I always said at least 1 to 3% of sales price. If you can get to 3 to 5% in this situation, that's just psychologically, that says to the seller, I'm serious about this thing. On a $500,000 house, it's a $15,000, it's a $25,000 earnest money deposit. And in that situation, it shows that you're serious and you have the wherewithal, to do that. Now, just as an example, just a reminder, let's just say for the sake of discussion, you have a contract and it's $500,000. and you get them to do a 5,000 earnest money, good for you. Congratulations. 5% of 500,000 is what? $25,000. It's a little math problem for you, right? What's 3% of 500,000? Well, that's $15,000. Guess how much we're going to have coming into our company? We're going to have 15,000. But guess what? We have 25,000 in earnest money. Therefore, a few days before closing, you need to put in your calendar, ask for that money to be sent to the closing company, because it's all sorts of issues if that doesn't happen. Now, the best thing is, and this is a good thing of writing, if you know who you're going to handle closing, whether it's, Bill Tucker at the lake, or Charlottesville Settlement, or Chip Royer, or whoever, most of those companies now will take the earnest money. So if you know who your buyer is going to use, have them write the earnest money check to the closing company. Then you take all that off of you and on me, to be perfectly honest, because now they have that money. And when it closes, out of that $25,000, $15,000 is going to come over to Roy Wheeler. There's nothing worse than finding out that, the day before, oh, wait, we've got some money, and now we got to wire it, and, it can create all sorts of issues. So just remember that. Go ahead, Barb.
I have a question that just dawned on me. What if they, I almost always use Charlottesville Settlement, but if something really tricky and some hassle came up where it would be better to use an attorney, what happens to that if they've written the earnest money to the settlement company, but closing is with the attorney? Is that a problem?
Well, I mean, it just have to be transferred, and that'd be simple. It'd just be, buyer and seller agree that earnest money being held by Charlottesville Settlement is now going to be held by Tucker, Griffin, and Barnes.
Okay.
However, the nice thing about Charlottesville Settlement, as many of you have learned, is if you use Charlottesville Settlement and you need to have some legal help, Bill Tucker is very quick to respond and help us out. So, because he's one of the partners of that settlement company. So that's a real benefit for us to have Ednum Title, because he's incredibly responsive, and will help. And it does, for the first couple little things, it doesn't cost anything. If it gets serious and now we got to retain him to represent the people, well, then we get them with them and they all decide what the hourly costs are going to be. And that's a decision that the client would make.
He's also almost always the best of Seville attorney.
Right. Right. 30 days or less, obviously, for the financial commitment. That's why, again, if you can get the lender really involved in the thing before you get to writing an offer, you may not need 30 days. The shorter period of time that you can get that lender to say, yeah, I can have this to you within that time. That's another place where the seller feels comfortable. It's only gonna be 14 days and I'll know, blah, blah, blah. We talked about submitting a legitimate pre-approval letter. Closing date, tailored to seller's wishes. So again, this is where you're talking to the listing agent, hey, help me out. When would they like to close? What's the ideal date that they want to close? And you write that date in. Do they need to stay in the house for a little bit? A seller's possession. You write that addendum in. Purchaser agrees to allow the seller to post occupancy agreement for a certain amount of time. And then the one that a lot of people don't talk about, which I think can really be helpful, is you find out from the listing agent that they're selling, but they're not still quite sure where they're going to go. They're thinking about maybe renting. They're thinking about blah, blah. Write an offer that says it's contingent on the seller finding a home of choice. This contract's contingent until, what's today, the 18th, till June 5th, 2021 on seller finding home of choice. Should the seller not find a home of choice, this contract can be made null and void and all parties removed. That's a wonderful thing for the seller, because you're giving them time to figure out what's going on. And if you've got somebody who's, renting and month to month, or, they've got 3 or 4 months, or you're the perfect candidate. Your buyer's the perfect candidate for that. So keep that one in mind. We talk about, delayed settlement. We talk about the post-occupancy agreement, but very rarely do you hear anybody talk about giving the seller time. And the same thing, we'll talk about this on Thursday, same thing. This may be the way that you get somebody off the fence of, well, I don't know if I want to sell because I don't know where to go. Hey, I totally get that. And what we can do is, in the agent remarks of the listing, we can say this property will be sold with a contingency, allowing the seller to find a home of choice. And because there's, it's obviously buyer demand, you're going to find buyers that are going to be willing to give those people that time. So, but that's where you're asking listing agent, how can I write this better? Obviously, don't ask for any personal property that's been excluded. Don't try to negotiate, washer and dryer and things like that. I've already seen a deal where we lost. We was second because somebody asked for the washer and dryer, when in fact it said washer and dryer doesn't convey. And so they went with the other offer. I mean, for the washer and dryer, obviously don't ask for, professional cleaning. I heard something yesterday on this Clubhouse segment that I was listening to. I love this. Leave everything. Just whatever you don't want to take with you, just leave it. We'll take care of it when we buy the house. So, it totally obliterates broom clean condition, right? Just we'll clean it for you. You just take what you want, leave everything else, and we'll take care of it. I mean, that's a cool thing, right? I mean, the seller going, oh my gosh, I don't have to move this stuff. I don't have to, get this stuff out of the garage or whatever. The buyer's just going to deal with it. You get 1-800 got junk in there, or ask Landis, and somebody gets that done. So that's a tip I got yesterday I had not heard about before. I think that one's great. If you obviously you've seen the house, you probably weren't going to do that when it's a hoarder. But if it's a situation that people have a nice house and whatever, they're going to take most of it, and whatever they don't, you deal with that. I love that. This is one that Alex knows that I get nudgy on. But having your buyer send a letter to the seller. There's nothing that says you can't do that. You just have to be really, really careful as it relates to fair housing and discriminate. Don't send a picture of the people. Don't talk about the kids. Don't talk about we're an older couple that likes the quiet of the cul-de-sac. But there's nothing that you can't say, the shed in the back's gonna be perfect for our handiwork and, this and that, handyman stuff and this and that. One of our agents submitted, which I thought was really good. I send my buyers all fair housing categories that they need to avoid. And I reserve the right to tweak the letter if I have to. So she makes them send her the letter first before it gets sent. So that there's no question that discrimination or anything is going to come into play.
The other day I saw a listing that said no, I forget the term they used, but no letters accepted.
Yep. Please do not send letters. And there are people who are in the agent mark saying, please do not submit offers with escalation clauses now too, because it's just become so squirrely. One that I came up with when I was doing my radio show 3 weeks ago is saying that your buyer will pay the seller's closing costs. Seller's closing costs with grantor's tax and real estate taxes and prorated real estate taxes and things like that can be, a couple percent. And 2% on 400,000, that's $8,000. If nobody else did that, that puts you $8,000 to the good as far as differentiating from another one. I heard yesterday, I don't recommend this, but I heard yesterday somebody say that they even gave some of their commission to the listing agent. They wrote the offer and said, I'm going to give 0.5% to you as the listing agent if you accept our offer. If you get your seller accept our offer. I don't like that. I'm just telling you that's something that you might see. I wouldn't recommend it. And if you're going to do it, you better let everybody know how everybody's being compensated, especially if you're a listing agent and that comes to you. I'd be really careful on that, because that's something that you have to let your seller know that, that there's additional compensation for me if you use this one. That could be a conflict of interest. And agency is very clear that your client needs to know how you're being compensated. Last resort, if you really think it's, down to the wire and you're, want to make it, to say to the listing agent, hey, we're going to, from 3%, we're going to waive our 3% offer compensation and make it 2.5%. I personally think that's not really going to make the difference. I think there are all these other ways that you can figure out that 0.5%. You're worth what you get paid, and you're going to work your tail off, as with buyer after buyer, contract after contract. And the last thing you want to do is begin to minimize you're just going to not feel good about it. That's something you need to do. But I feel like I needed to put it in here because other people are mentioning it. The last thing I'll say, if you haven't heard it over this hour of time, terms matter. Terms matter. Listing agents are going to tell you that buyers were chosen over a larger net of another offer because their terms were cleaner. They were clearly communicated. Think about an agent that's got 6, 7, 8 contracts. Give them a summary sheet. Going back to the very beginning about a clear and clean offer. You're writing the offer, you're clean, you've got everything in place. Give them a summary sheet of why your offer should be accepted and bullet point, cash or 20% down, or buyer's going to pay the seller's closing costs, or whatever. Okay, you bullet point those things. So when the agent's trying to deal with 7 or 8 offers, that summary sheet can make the difference because you clearly communicate all the things that they may have missed if you didn't put it in there. So hopefully this has been helpful, giving you some ideas that you didn't have. The nice thing is, recorded it so you can go back and listen to it again, or people that missed it, you're listening to it now. Any additional thoughts before we close up?
Good luck out there. It's brutal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thanks so much. Have a great day. And hey, if you didn't see it, we'd love to have you Friday afternoon. We're going to do a AHIP walk at Ednam. It's $30, I think. You can go on and register. We sent it out yesterday. We're going to post it on the Agent Only Facebook page too. We're just going to meet at Ednam at 5 o'clock. We're doing a 1-mile walk. You register through the AHIP site and go on the Howard Hanna Roy Wheeler team, and then we'll get back to back to Ednam and have a beverage and have a chance to see each other Friday afternoon. So if you're interested, please take advantage of that.
If we've registered for the 5K part of it, can we stop in for the?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Please feel free.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, if you want, you can have part of your 5K be that walk.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
could go out at 4 o'clock and do 1.5 miles and then walk around the neighborhood with us for the finale.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess we can't ride our beach bikes, right?
I think this is a walk. Now, you can ride your beach bike. We're grateful to have everybody who wants to come, but I think they're talking about it being a walk. But if you pay your $30, I bet you they'll let you ride whatever you want. All right, guys, have a good day.